You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
To the chasers of light, to the purveyors of pictures, to all of you listening around the world, and as Bill and Ted would say, dudes and dudettes, you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Deal, along with your other host, Brandon Gorrie. What a laugh. So, this is the F11 Photography Podcast, a weekly photography podcast that we put out every Tuesday. Usually comes out around 4 in the morning Central Time, which I think is like -6, -7 GMT. So, wherever you are in the world, that's when we release this every Tuesday. We love to talk about photography, videography, process, gear, etc., etc., etc. You can check us out at f11pod.com. You can check us out on Instagram and Twitter with the handle F11pod. And if you follow us on the major platforms, which you must be because you're listening to this right now, if you could leave us a 5-star review, we would be very grateful because as you leave these reviews, it tickles the algorithm of the respective podcast host sites and puts us higher up on the search results. And so then we get to grow.
Yeah. Notice how he didn't say 4.5 stars. He said 5 stars. So if we catch one of you giving us a 4.5-star review, you bet your ass we're going to reply to that shit, and we'll probably even take it down, and we'll sue for libel.
No, we won't. But if you do give us a 1-star rating, just remember, just like click 5 because we love you. If you hate us, click 5 because you want us to grow. All right. So today's episode is going to be part 2 of growing in photography, things to improve with your photography. We already did a growing through photography episode, so I didn't say that correctly. Today is going to be part 2 of things that I've learned to improve photography, things that Brandon has learned to improve photography, and hopefully things that we can pass along to you all if you're a beginner, or maybe if you're seasoned but you just didn't realize maybe if I just changed this one little thing, it could make me a much better and improved photographer. And so where we're going to start... working with people who are better than you. Now, I know that this is a very ego-driven industry, and nobody's work is as good as my work, and nobody's work is as good as Brandon's work. And if you're at home listening, nobody's work is as good as your work. But the truth is that there are people out there who make your work look like shit. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Everybody you meet knows something that you don't. Coming up in this industry, whether you did it 50 years ago or you're doing it now, one of the best ways to improve yourself as a photographer is to study under people who are better than you. And we talked about that in the Sending the Ladder Back Down episode, which, by the way, is another way to improve as a photographer. When you get experience or success in your career as a photographer, it's good to send the ladder back down and help the community out. So I'm just going to go off on a side track on that. If that whole philosophy sounds good to you, sending the ladder back down, we did a few weeks back do an episode on that. So I highly encourage you to go through our back catalog and check out that episode. But we're going to keep the focus on working with people who are better than you. And so what am I talking about? So I did just say, study under other photographers. So, for instance, there's stuff that Brandon does that I don't do that maybe I want to do better. Maybe I go hang out and bug him and scare off his models on one of his shoots.
You're welcome anytime.
I'll hold a reflector, bro. But it could be lateral. It's not about, I look at the whole body of work and this person's better than me. There are people who are younger than me who know how to do things that I don't know how to do because of when I came up. Like, I don't really know a lot of post-production tricks that a lot of them know. Like, it's funny because when people do give me compliments on any retouching work I do, I'm just kind of like, if you knew how I got to that result, you'd probably be like, what's wrong with you? It's like, because I taught myself how to do a lot of things, and YouTube helped a little bit as well. It doesn't even necessarily have to be someone as experienced or more experienced. There are people who are less experienced than you that still know things that you don't. So that's the point. Better than you at something, not overall. Now, people who are better than you overall tend to have a lot of things that will help elevate you as a photographer and pull you up. So, and it's not just limited to working with other photographers. So, as we talked about in the modeling episode, if you are up and coming and you want to go up another tier, so let's just say we have a tiered system as a photographer. It's like, oh, I've hit this point. Now I'm at this tier. I hit that point. Now I'm at that tier. Well, it works across all the different types of parts of the industry. You have makeup artists who are at a particular level, who are working on particular types of projects. You have models who are working on particular types of projects that are at a particular level. And then there's where you are as a photographer, whatever level you're at. Go seek people who are a tier or two better than you, because their experience will teach you things that you didn't know. It'll elevate the quality of your work, and it'll pull you up to their tier, or at least get you closer to their tier. And so that's something that I personally have experienced, is that I'm not afraid to reach out to people who are maybe a tier or two better than me. You need to make sure that, your work can at least be backed up. You don't want to say, hey, I picked up a camera this week. I'm going to approach a modeling agency. I got this really great idea. They're not going to say yes, but just make sure you can back it up, but when you're at that point. And so, in your experience, Brandon, do you see the benefits of working with people who are better than you?
Oh my God, yes. And sometimes you don't even realize, it's not, I've not diligently gone out and tried to work with a photographer who I thought was better than me. It didn't occur like that. How it happened was I just, started hanging out with photographer friends who shot differently than me. And I had no intention of learning anything. I just, wanted to spend some time with them, wanted to hang out during one of their shoots, that kind of stuff, just shooting the breeze and, just being there, right? You're a part of the environment. And I started noticing that they started shooting things, and the way they approached the shoot, the way they approached the model, and the different areas that they took their time on versus the different areas that they were quick on, it opened my eyes. I was kind of just like, wait a second. Instead of crossing my arms, being in the corner, acting like the cool guy with the fawn's hairdo, instead I was just like, oh shit, this is really cool. So I started looking at what the photographer, how he was directing, and my buddy was giving great direction, and he was taking his time directing, and he was looking at the model a lot and posing them in real time without even putting the camera up to his face, and he was just studying the shot himself, because you can always change the light, you can always change the inverse square law versus on the background versus the subject and all that stuff, but the shape that you're looking for, he spent a lot of time on that. And so that's something I learned that was fascinating, and it taught me a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and in terms of working with other photographers, it may not even be necessarily working with a photographer who's better than you. Maybe the whole title is a tad misleading, but working with photographers who are different than you, people who shoot in different styles, people who use different techniques and methods to get from point A to point B. You could put that notch in your belt, learn from them, and then see how you can apply it to your work. And, the reason why I also bring up other trades in the industry is because I learn a lot about color from stylists. I learn about the flow of clothes, if I'm shooting fashion, from stylists. There's so much you can learn from stylists about that sort of thing. And just attention to detail about this particular piece has these pleats that work with this set that you had or whatever, and so they see things as artists, just like you see things as artists, but differently, right? Because they're doing it from the perspective of somebody who styles clothing on bodies, whereas you're just capturing what they're putting on the body. And so they don't see things the way that I guess they don't see things the way you see them. They give you a little bit of a different perspective. And you can learn from them. You can learn stuff from hairstylists about hair. I learned a lot about makeup. To me, I don't even know the names of all the cosmetics. I'm like, I think that's concealer. I think that's mascara, eyeliner. You just
lost completely.
Yeah, exactly. So let cooks cook. But makeup artists. I learned real fast. You want to talk about working with people who are better than you that elevate or shit all over your shoots? Makeup artists, like I had a makeup artist once. I was doing a shoot for a swimsuit line, and I had this model who was African American, dark skin, obviously, and the makeup artist didn't really have a lot of experience working on people with darker skin, and she made her face look. Her foundation, first of all, was a swimsuit shoot, and so I was less opinionated back then. I was too afraid to speak up. But if hindsight's always 20/20. If I were going to speak, I'm like, this is a swimsuit shoot. We don't need a full face of makeup here. Like we're outdoors. We're on the lake, and they're in a swimsuit. But anyway, she put a full base foundation on her face. I think I'm using that terminology correctly, and she looked like. I guess the term is ashy, like pretty gray faced, and it was fucking bad. And that was a shoot where I was like, okay, makeup artists can make or break a fucking shoot. And so I was like, she was like the last model I needed to shoot, and the makeup artist I think was getting paid per hour. And so her time was starting to wrap up, and so I went up to the model and I was like, hey, makeup artist is about to leave. Just chill. We're just going to pretend to shoot. And then when she packs her stuff up, I want you to go to the bathroom. I want you to wipe all that shit off your face, and we're just going to shoot you with your all your eyeliner and shit that they gave you, but we're going to take all your foundation off and shoot your natural skin, which she had gorgeous natural skin. She didn't need anything on her face. And, but yes, other trades can make or break. Stylists can do that too, though. Like if a stylist sucks at their job and that their clothes distract from the shoot in a bad way, that could be bad. But seek people out who are better than you, and it's not just about the experience you gain; it's about the connections you make. Because I noticed that the second I started shooting agency models, other agency models started following me. And then these other agency models started reaching out to me. And I was like, cool. And then when their agency sees that you've worked with 3 or 4 of their models, they're like, oh, okay. And you approach them about an idea. You're already on their radar because they're starting to like your posts and stuff like that. So, it puts you on that radar. But you gotta be brave enough to do it. And, a lot of these models and hair and makeup artists and all that, they're all in the same industry. It's a small industry. So they're not going to bite your head off if you reach out to them. They may not look at your DM, because they're getting a million DMs. And if you're not following each other, you may just show up and a request, and they may just delete those. But, that's why it's good to play, as we talked about in the models episode, the back and forth in the comments of their posts. Just be like, oh, this is a really nice set. They see your comment. Now you're at the very least a blip on their radar. But if you end up in the requests, they may never see it.
I'll tell you what, just, a quick tip that you made me think of immediately is if you want to grow and you want to have an enormous advantage over everyone else, and it's not that not that it's a competition, but you want to level up your game, do your damnedest to find a team that you can work well with. Find a stylist and a makeup artist, even a hairstylist. That might be a bit much, but find a team that shoots within your niche, that shoots the similar vibes to you, and that you work well with. Test with them, grow with them, make ideas with them, because as soon as you start acting and shooting as a unit, the bet, I'm not joking, your work will just skyrocket. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes a village.
Yeah, elevate together. That's the other thing is, another thing we talked about in the models episode is, when you start off I started reaching out to models on this Facebook group, and that's the very, very, very bottom, But guess what? Those models, a lot of those models I was working with, a lot of them have kind of gone up the tiers with me, and some of them are with agencies now, and some of them have taken their digitals and then they got into agencies off my digitals. So it's oh, this is really cool to see. I'm super proud of them. And we have a fashion week here in Austin. We're not a very fashion forward city, but we do have a fashion week here, and some of them walk out fashion week, and I go see them and applaud for them. Even though I'm not really into event photography, I don't shoot at fashion week because I think runway photography is boring, but it's like the Super Bowl for models and stylists because they get to show off their work. But yeah, it's I mean, growing as a unit, growing as a group. I mean, I tend to use the same makeup artists and all that. And when you do need to vet these people, because I know a lot of makeup artists who like do wedding. Like they do wedding makeup, and wedding makeup is borderline glam makeup. And they, if you're trying to do some avant-garde off the wall thing and they don't have anything like that in their portfolio, like at least look for it. Like, can you do avant-garde? Because I have seen some makeup artists attempts to do that. Like they do a beautiful natural look, which, by the way, if you're a photographer, one of the hardest things for makeup artists to do is to make it look like someone's not wearing makeup. Like, because even when you see like a beauty ad, like for Olay or Pond's or any of those types of ads, they're actually wearing makeup. You don't realize it because the makeup artists who are working on them are so damn talented that they can make a natural skin makeup look. And it's a very difficult thing to do, and I have super mad respect for that. But point being is, if that's what they do, but they can't do like really avant-garde, crazy color stuff, they might make your model look like a fucking clown. So you gotta be super careful on that kind of stuff.
The same goes for stylists though too.
Oh yeah.
I work with a stylist, and they're a phenomenal stylist, I might add, but it wasn't the right fit. And so I sent them a mood board where I wanted a very dictatorial look, because that's what I like. I like trench coats. I like shiny black boots. I like olive green. I like leather gloves. And I like really, really stern haircuts and facial expressions.
It's quite a kink.
Yeah, it's, you know what, when you major in Russia and Eastern European studies, it comes with the degree. And so I show up at their place, early before the shoot, and they show me everything that they've got. And this is it's a submission for a magazine, and they had a rack full of like Argyle and fucking pastel sweaters for me.
And it's like, have you ever seen my work? Like,
and I was just so.
Is that the equivalent? Is that the equivalent of a model approaching you about elf ears, but from a stylist's perspective?
I wasn't upset. I was just like, okay, this isn't the shoot. We're just gonna make another shoot on the fly, and that was that.
Did they not send you like the stuff ahead of time, or did they just show up with it?
No, they didn't. They were running late. It was kind
sucks.
of. It went from like it was pretty chaotic.
You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
That is a really great segue moment for us to transition into mood boards. So, another thing you can do to improve yourself as a photographer, if you shoot human subjects, I don't really think you do this with landscape, but you do this with other genres too, commercial genres and things like that, product photography, mood boards. So, and food photography, it's funny. I learned that there's I didn't realize this, but they have food stylists.
Yep.
I was like, a what? And like, a food stylist. I was like, what the fuck is a food stylist? It's like, they're
wrong.
like stylists. They're like stylists for clothes, but they style food. And it's like, but it's like a Burger King burger. Like, what the fuck do you need a stylist for? It's like, oh no, well, half the shit on that burger is not even real. It's all like, they like put like plastic tomatoes on there and stuff. And so, oh, okay, cool. So
wait till you hear about the food gaffer.
Yeah, well, if you're listening and you're a food stylist, my most sincere apologies, but I'm just like, what the fuck, man? like you go home for Thanksgiving. What do you do, Johnny? I'm a food stylist.
I'm doing it right now.
You want to talk about an argument at the thing? Like, what the fuck is a food stylist? Like, I'm just a food eater, but anyway, mood boards. So it goes into our last episode where we talk about shooting with intention. Shooting with intention requires planning. And if you just show up, you might get some really awesome spontaneous things. I've done it from experience, but I've also noticed that my shoots that are my best shoots were planned, and they had a lot of work that went into them. And what is a mood board if you're following along and you don't really know a lot about mood boards? What could a mood board consist of? So when I do a mood board, I usually will use a program like Canva. Now, a lot of models or other people that you work with, they'll use Pinterest, but here's my one issue at Pinterest. I think Pinterest can be a really good front line to find some inspiration, but I find that the algorithm is super repetitive. And I know this because every first time I work with a model, and I'll get into this later, which is the do your homework part, and I've touched on this in the past, is I have them go through my portfolio and pick things out that they like, blah, blah, blah. So I know the style that I want them to shoot, I want them to be shot in. But I'll be like, hey, put together a mood board of stuff that inspires you, of poses, outfits, things like that. And I would say that 25 to 50% of my mood boards have the same, at least one or two pictures that repeat. Like there's like, anytime I do a black and white studio shoot, there's like this pose of this model, like kind of laying on this little square thing that comes a couple of feet off the ground. And she's in like this really awesome pose. I think it's one of the Jenners. I don't know. I don't follow that shit, but every model like shows me that in their mood board. And that's what lets me know that the algorithms on Pinterest need a little bit of work, because I end up getting the exact same mood boards almost. Like at least half the mood board is like, oh, I've gotten this one, and the last model who sent me a mood board. So I try to move models off of Pinterest, and I try to get them at least into a Google search, just to try a different algorithm out. And then we use a program called Canva, which is just a web-based program. You can get a free account, and then you can just make pages. And then they have a really cool thing where there's a little color thing up in the upper left. And when you click on the little color icon, it'll analyze all the pictures you put in your mood board, and it'll spit out like a little color swatch of like, here's all the different colors that you have on your mood board. And it kind of gives you a basis. And what's great about that is if you're going to approach a stylist about, hey, these are the colors that we're really feeling for this. So as Brandon talked about, oh, I like olive and black and all that. Well, he's putting together a mood board to give to a stylist. This person who's showing up with the Argyle and shit, I'd be like, oh, this Argyle doesn't work with this mood board that Brandon sent me, and none of the colors are right. And so it gives you a nice collaborative environment to start with. But Brandon, tell me, what do you use for mood boards? How do you do mood boards?
I am so glad you asked, Kevin. Well, let me tell you, I did start with Pinterest for a while, and now I've switched over to Milanote. It's a great online platform that you can get the free version, which gives you a couple boards, a lot of creativity. All right, I'm going to turn that off now. No, so I definitely agree that Pinterest does get repetitive. I do still use Pinterest quite often. I honestly often reference old boards on Pinterest, and I make sure that each board is vastly, vastly different. You do have to do a little bit of digging with the search bar, but you can find some pretty weird off-the-wall stuff on Pinterest. And so I have a lot of my stuff broken down there as an inspo, and then from there I'd change details like makeup, hair, clothes, etc., etc. Now I will take photos from Pinterest and I'll put them in a folder, and then I'll move that folder and create an entire shoot itinerary on Milanote, which is essentially just a blank board where you just drag and drop modules, and you can like draw arrows pointing to one thing. They've got swatches included. You include Pantones and like hyperlinks and like just everything you need, call sheets and all that. As well as that, I also definitely believe that the most that you're going to get from Pinterest is kind of just like, not mediocre is the wrong word.
No, mediocre is the right word. Remember how we talk about on Instagram? Because Instagram's all algorithmic. We're like, hey, if you want to look like everybody else, you get inspired from Instagram. If you want to have the exact same mood boards as everyone else, you use Pinterest.
It's kind of just like right down the middle quality, where it's not bad quality by any means. It's not avant-garde. It's kind of just like right down the middle. So if you're looking for something that you really want to push the envelope, there's absolutely no shame in, first of all, find a fashion designer that you like. Okay, find a fashion designer that you want to shoot like, that you know, that's in line with your work, and go check out their campaigns. Look at past campaigns. Look at past shoots of theirs, makeup and all that stuff. That's where you're going to find the cream of the crop stuff to not only emulate but learn from. You know, study the light patterns, study how they lit the shot, study the color wheel. You know, what are the colors of the shadows? What are the colors of the highlights? And then if you build your mood board out of that, not only do you have something like a high bar set for yourself, but in order to come close to that high bar, you actually have to improve and put a lot of thought into your shot. And not only that, but it makes the model really, really fucking excited to see that, oh, we're going to shoot for Elliot Emil's fucking 2021, fall catalog. Let's do that. Like, that's sick.
Absolutely. And the program that you use, Canva, they're all the general basis of them is the same. They have different features. Some are better than others. There are some areas of Canva that are better, and et cetera. But it just depends on what you're into. But like the general basis for making a mood board is you're putting your plan together. You're like poses, looks, location, colors, hair, makeup. I usually have a page. If I'm doing a big shoot, I have a page at least of each area. And then the nice thing I like about Canva, and I'm sure you can do it with your program, is I can invite all the other people to collaborate, and they can drag and drop. So like the makeup artist can drag and drop pictures and upload them and then put them in my little template. And then we have this compilation. Like I did a fashion shoot, this fashion shoot where they wanted to like emulate like animals in the jungle. It was like I had a giraffe. I had a panther. Had sex panther. Sorry, I had to throw out a Anchorman joke there. We had all these different peacock, stuff like that, and then like within each animal we had our own types of poses. So like a flamingo obviously would have a long leg, so we really drew this out. It was like a 20-page mood board because we had to have a mood board for each individual animal, and then they had their own hair and their own style of clothing and their posing and the color scheme and all that, and it was really cool. And like what Brandon was saying with going to old Pinterest boards, I actually go to my old Canva boards and my old Pinterest boards, and I'll go in and I'll borrow from them, and like I kind of like where, because sometimes the reason why this is a good idea is sometimes you show up with your mood board and the stylist shows up with fucking Argyle sweaters and shit, and you're like, well, I didn't really execute the idea I set out to execute, so I'm going to pull it up for a later shoot. That's the nice thing about these programs is that they save everything, and so you can go. I have a shoot I want to do in the West Texas oil fields one day, and I still haven't gotten around to doing it, and I just keep kicking the can down the road until the right opportunity comes along. I may actually alter it. I think I'm going to do them in the refineries in Houston next time I'm in town. But speaking of color, something that can really help you out quite a bit with mood boards, there is a website, and this is not any sort of sponsor because nobody sponsors this podcast yet. Sorry. Yet. One day. It's called Peloton, not Peloton, not the bike that you see people ride around on, and then they'll tell you every 5 minutes that they have a Peloton bike. Kind of like people who CrossFit, they won't shut the fuck up about it. It's like I have a $3,000 debt. That's true. That I put on the curb in February because I didn't follow through with my New Year's resolution. But anyway, Peloton, Peletton. If you ever find yourself on a set and you have an internet connection, which you should because you probably have at least cellular service, bookmark Peloton.com. Because what's cool about Peloton.com is they have a HSI color wheel, and you can move it around. And then there's a little place up there where it's like, oh, I want to do like adjacent colors. I want to do a triad of 3 colors. I want to do a tetrad of 4 colors. Or whatever, or freestyle 4 colors. And then it puts a swatch together. As you move things around, it puts a swatch together. And when I don't have a stylist on set with me, boy, this thing comes in handy when I'm trying to like synchronize a backdrop or when I'm trying to match a backdrop to an outfit. I can just go, okay, it's about that color, and I can start moving the wheel around and go, okay, I need to do this particular backdrop to make it work. And so, that's just another notch to have in your belt, something that you can do to be better, to make your pictures look better. Now, Brandon doesn't like colors, so, he desaturates. I'm fucking with you.
No, you're absolutely right. But it's not that I don't like it. It's that I have a massive fear with color. I don't know how to manage it. I don't think that way, right? So I could never, I've been doing my best to style people, but I only style people with really monotone or very easy stuff. because I don't work well with color. I don't see it very well. It's like I'm the same with interior design. If you pay me to design the inside of my apartment, I couldn't fucking do it. Like, I just don't think that way.
I'm not good at that either, which is why I need this Peloton website.
That would help me so much.
Yeah, like I have it bookmarked. So like, because I shoot tethered, which by the way is going to be one of the things we talk about here. It's probably the thing we're going to go to next. But I shoot tethered, so I always have my laptop with me in a studio shoot, and so I can just tab on over to my my Google Chrome browser and pull up Peloton. And it also helps too if you use gels. So I like to use gels. Actually, that's not true. That's a lie. I don't like to use gels for the very reason that Brandon is afraid of color. I fucking hate using gels because not only do you have to like take your modifier off and then find the gel color and match it up. It's it's very laborious, like using gels. As a matter of fact, I am looking at maybe getting some lights that have like 16 million colors in them this Friday. Some LED lights for the studio that get fairly bright. I just got to make sure they can get to like f8, f11, which is what I like to shoot at. And so, but yeah, I don't like using gels. But in the when I nut up and I use gels, I usually end up getting really good results. And I use this Peloton.com site because it helps me out in a way that I don't think I'm naturally good at. But I have noticed that the more and more I use this site, the better I get at color coordinating. So it's no different than going, I don't know how to do manual focus on my lens very well. I have to rely on autofocus. Well, try shooting a manual focus for a few sessions. You'll get better at it. It's no different than anything else. You practice at it. And so, but yeah, mood boards, back to the point, mood boards are so important. They can be such powerful tools. And if you're driven by moving up tiers and being a better photographer, just I get it. You take a picture and in 1/500th of a second or 1/8000th of a second, it's over, right? You captured it, but that's not really how it works. You got to do post-production. You got to plan like what you captured, what you put into that 8,000th of a second or whatever. If it doesn't have a lot of thought behind it, it goes back to what we talked about in the last episode of shooting with intention. If you're one of those photographers who just like takes pictures of empty things, it's kind of like that term empty calories. Yeah. It's like it's just like empty calories or empty stats and sports. It's like, soulless. Okay, you took a picture of something that was aesthetically pleasing and technically perfect, but I'm bored.
I'll tell you what. A really, really good practice you should start implementing in your shoots is, well, first of all, when you make your mood board, use it during the shoot. Don't just use it to plan so that you and the model are on the same page. Like reference it. Have it open during the shoot. Because otherwise, it's just, you're going, you have no direction.
Yeah. On bigger shoots, I have it on an iPad right off the side. And I usually will pass it to like stylists and go, are you following this? Are we on track?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other thing is, of that mood board, pick at least one shot that you really like, that you're inspired by, that is much better than your work, and fucking dedicate time to trying to emulate that shot perfectly. Because what you'll find, and I did this recently, and it was amazing. I found that I spent fucking 25 minutes on this shot, moving the light, turning the light down, changing the pose. It was a whole like workshop trying to like get this light. And then when I finally got the shot, the model and I, it was like, we knew that it wasn't our shot. That's all well and good. But it changes the way you see things, that you start seeing the details a lot better, and it's training yourself to look for those details, because there's no other way to see that shit than to practice seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that episode. We talked about emulation. Sometimes when you emulate something that you see, you get a notch on your belt, and then you figure out how to take that idea and do your own thing with it, to where the person who did it probably isn't going to call you out on it. Like, oh, okay, you were just learning something about yourself.
This is Jason Berkman, and you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
Let's talk about shooting tethered. So this is something that I love to do, and there are so many advantages to it. I have a YouTube channel for those of you who don't know that, and Brandon does too, by the way. But I shoot tethered, and I'm actually I've been working on this episode since like October about shooting tethered. I just don't have enough footage yet, so it's slowly going to happen. But There's so many advantages to shooting tethered. So first and foremost, one of the things that I do is I do testing for new models. So they are green, like they just got signed to a modeling agency. They have not yet been shaped into whatever they want. They've not yet been shaped into whatever the agency is going to try to shape them into. At this point in time, they've basically been signed. They've been given some sort of a menu of, hey, here's four photographers to reach out to. Here's their rates. And then I happened to be the one that they reached out to. And so I know that when these people reach out to me that they are green models. They don't know shit about shit yet. They don't know their bodies. They don't know how they photograph in front of cameras for the most part. That they tend to be on the green side. And so something that I do is that I shoot them tethered, and I use Capture One, and I go HDMI out of my laptop into a gigantic 70-inch TV on a rolling cart. And I do that because even the best of the best models, the supermodels, Jerry Hall, Cindy Crawford, all these models, they would have a mirror off to the side back before tethering was a thing, back when they shot on film. And the models would have this big, life-size mirror off to the side. So when the photographer was giving them directions, they could just look over 90 degrees and work on their pose. And then because it was through a mirror, they would reverse it for the photographer. And so that is an age-old trick that models have used to be better. And one of the great things about digital is that at the speed of light, we can have all this stuff just, come out of a television, and they can see right after they do a shot, right after they pose for a shot and the shutter goes off, it'll display. Now, it's not real time in the sense that they're not seeing their movements in real time. They're not seeing like what I'm seeing in my camera. But if I take a shot of somebody and a half a second later they see the shot, they can go look at the monitor and go, oh, I need to move my hand up. Or if I'm giving them a micro adjustment coaching, they can look up and go, oh, I know what he means because I can see myself on the television. I can see the perspective because in the modeling episode, we talked about what we looked for in models. We talked about the fact that we like models who know their bodies in front of a camera because we only have so much bandwidth. Brandon pointed out that we only have so much bandwidth and we're going to miss framing and things like that if we're too busy like over coaching the model. So one of the ways you can build confidence in a new model is with tethering. And if you're building their confidence as the shoot goes on, you're going to get better results, and then the agency is going to be super happy with you. And this isn't just agency shoots. This is any shoot in a studio. If you can do tethered, I cannot recommend enough that you shoot tethered. And then there's the etiquette aspect of it. First and foremost, I hope if you're listening to this, don't ever fucking touch a model. Like, you should be able to direct somebody without touching them. It's no different than the model, knowing how to pose. It's just a checklist of things you should know as a photographer when you're directing a model is you should never ever put your hands on them, period. And one way you can definitely guarantee that you don't have to is if you tell somebody to move their hand up and you're like, no, not there, and then you grab it and you move it where you want it to go, that's inappropriate etiquette. And we're going to do an entire episode on that. But there's absolutely no reason for you to do that in the first place because you can just walk right over to the monitor and go, you see how your hand's here? If you could just put it up here and just like you point up where you want it to go, and then they move their hand up, and then you didn't have to touch them, and you're lawsuit free. So that is another reason why I love to shoot models tethered. And then another reason, and I'm going to let Brandon comment on this because I know he doesn't shoot tethered, which is why he's in the listening mode and not a talking mode right now.
I'm over here and like sitting crisscross applesauce.
The other reason why I love to shoot models tethered, it goes back to what we talked about in our last episode. There's actually two parts to this. One, take less pictures. If they can improve in real time, you get to your final result faster. And so you don't have to take 25 shots in a session because they go, I see what I need to fix. They fix it. You take a picture. Both of you look at the monitor and go, yep. And then you move on to the next shot. You don't have to take the same shot 7 times. You take it once. You both agree. You're seeing at 70 inches. So as a photographer, yep, that's in focus. I nailed it. No problem. I got what I needed. You're doing an 1/8 inch shutter drag. You can look at what the flash did, what the LED light did, or whatever lights you're getting to interact with one another. You can actually see that thing blown up right in front of your face. Then you can make that determination and you go, yes, I nailed this. Let's move on to the next thing. You can move faster. That's one way you can move faster. The other way you can move faster, if you do not shoot tethered, how do you build confidence with the model? I know exactly how you build confidence with the model. You go walk up to the model and you show them the back of the camera. And you're chipping through shots, and you're showing them the back of the camera, and you're wasting a whole lot of fucking time you could be shooting because you're looking at the shots. If you're tethered, they can look over real quick, see the shot, go, fuck yeah, I'm killing it, keep going. They can stay in their flow pose. You never have to turn around and show them the back of the camera because it's all going to your laptop, which is going to a television. It's saving you a ton of time. You have to take less shots, therefore you have to cull less shots, therefore you have less shots you need to worry about editing. And that's how you get down from like a 2,500 shot session to like a 300 shot session because I'm burping. Hold on. I had coffee. And that's how you get from like a 2,500 shot session down to like a 200 or a 300 shot session because you're more efficient. And being able to see how things are working out in real time helps you fine tune your sessions. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely tether when I can. Now, I work in a community space, so sometimes the television is not available here, but I can turn around my laptop if I need to. And Capture One also does have a really cool thing where you can just put the Capture One pilot program on your laptop. Capture One has this really cool thing where you can put a free app called Capture One Pilot on an iPad. And so you can just put an iPad on a chair next to the model. And if you don't have a big TV, it'll just beam everything wirelessly. It's only about a half a second delay and they can see their shots that way. So we live in a great time for instant feedback. And that's one of the reasons why, that's several of the reasons why I shoot tethered. So what are your thoughts on that since you don't shoot tethered?
I definitely definitely hearing that. I know that not shooting tethered is just putting an extra strain on my bandwidth. I don't show the models the back of the camera unless I know that I need to. So, if I sense that they're not sure, just how great they're doing, I'll show them the back of the camera. Or if they're doing really, really fucking well, I'll show them the back of the camera so that they relax even more, because usually if they're killing it and I show them the back of the camera, suddenly they're just like, okay, I'm doing that well, I don't need to stress about it. And then they start getting into the creative mode. They start doing like off the wall shit that's really fun to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you, the visual feedback allows you to take things in different directions. But definitely think though, I think you should give it a shot, because I think that if you give it a shot, you'll see that you'll take less pictures because you'll get to the result faster.
Yeah. I have a lot of misfires. So one problem I do have, and I probably shouldn't say this on here, but my camera has a big issue with focusing at like f11 in a studio when I only have like one or two model lights on. Like I need it to be bright as fuck in there, otherwise it doesn't like focus very well. So I'll be taking shots on shots, and like sometimes when it's really bad, it'll be every third or fourth shot is actually like in focus. So that's not something I want on the screen. It's more like if I know that I can nail the shot each time, then it'd be like conducive to have it on the screen. But like there are some shoots where the studio is just not conducive to the actual like shooting itself.
Yeah, so the solution to that problem is to shoot on Canon or Sony, and then you never have to worry about misfires.
God.
Although if you have Sony, you'll have really fucking shitty color science. Sorry, Sony users. Everything looks too black.
It comes out looking like a cartoon, dude.
Just kidding. Everybody has their thing that they're into. I'm just not into Sony. So it's more of the menus than anything. But yeah, I guess I don't have that problem. But I do have that problem on my GFX. That thing is slow as fuck. And I tell models beforehand, I'm like, hey, this camera, like when it hits, it's a portfolio shot, but it misses a lot. And I tell models, like when we shoot on them, like you're gonna have some poses that you're gonna be like, I nailed it, and then when I give you the stuff back, you're gonna be like, where's that shot that was like, because I missed this camera misses.
Oh yeah,
it's so slow. But when you nail, it's just like, oh, there's a portfolio shot. Okay, like you can usually get one a session out of it, and it's like, all right, well that's important. So, but yeah, shooting tethered, I personally I love doing it. Now I don't always do it. There are times when like I'm just lazy, and also I find that the more experienced the model is, the more confident the model is. Sometimes they don't need to shoot tethered, especially if it's somebody I work with like a million times. It's like no, we already know what we're doing, and we just go through and then we look at everything when we're done. But I do highly recommend, especially if you start working with agencies and you do testing for new models who are not very experienced. That's a really great way. And not even like agency models, just any subject that you take a picture of. Like when I do headshots I don't do corporate headshots very often, but sometimes somebody wants to pay me a lot of money to do it. And hey, money's awesome. So I will do like a corporate headshot session with somebody who's just some business guy or whatever, and I'll shoot tethered then. They think it's cool. As I said, it's good as a confidence builder, especially for non-models. When they see themselves through the monitor, through like a $10,000 camera setup, they're like, oh shit, this looks great. And then they're more likely to recommend you to other people because like, oh yeah, I got to see myself in real time. And then all of a sudden you become a headshot photographer, which is what you wanted to do. You're like, damn it, he keeps recommending me. So maybe don't shoot tethered if there's a genre that you don't want to do often. I guess that's really the takeaway here.
That's what we've been trying to get to all along. We just finally arrived.
You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
So we talked about shooting tethered. I think we're going to shift gears now to another topic, tips I have learned to improve my photography, and that is make clients do their homework. And what do I mean by that? So I'm sure it's super flattering if you're a photographer and someone reaches out to you and they're like, hey, I really love your photography. I want you to do this project for me. And it could be any type of project. It could be like a lifestyle shoot. It could be a wedding. It could be modeling. It could be whatever. It could be product photography. And then when we talked about mood boards, like, so what I do, and I don't do this for my ego, I do this for my homework. If a model, if a subject, a person reaches out to me for a portrait session, which is primarily what I do, I'll be like, okay, go through my portfolio and find your 5 favorite shots that you see that are shot in the style you want me to shoot you in. That doesn't mean pick your 5 favorite shots of mine that you see. Pick your 5 favorite shots of mine that are shot in a style that you want me to shoot you in. That's the assignment. And I do that for several reasons. One, I need to see if the person actually has a plan, because if somebody reaches out to you to do a portrait session, but they can't really tell you what they want to have done, it's really hard to gauge if you're going to be a good fit for them, if you're going to meet their expectations, etc. And it also gives me a little bit of a little cheat code, because they might come back with 5 shots that I took at 85 millimeters. And like, clearly they love that perspective. Or maybe they like more environmental portraits and I took them at 35 millimeters and they choose 35 millimeters. Maybe I've actually had, for those of you who don't know, I shoot on Canon R5, Fuji XH2, and then a Fuji GFX. And then I shoot on film. I shoot on a lot of different systems. I've actually had clients come back and they picked 5 shots I shot on medium format digital. Like, it was like, clearly this is a Fuji GFX project. I've also had some where it's like a mix of everything. It's like shit. But it's good to do that kind of, to make them do that homework for you, because it's like a cheat sheet. It's a little cheat code that helps you kind of hone in on if you're a good fit. And if you are a good fit, what lenses you're going to use, what camera system you're going to use, etc. And then the other thing about that whole process is like for weddings, for instance, there are creative. Some genres of photography are more creative than others, and other genres are more consumer driven. So if you're listening to this and you shoot weddings, or you shoot boudoir, or you shoot family stuff, it's going to be very cookie cutter requests from the client. It's not really genres that lend themselves well, headshots especially. They see what they want, and that's what they want for themselves. They're not asking you to go in and come up with your beautiful, decrepit Eastern European, Russian concept.
Okay.
They want like balloons and happiness, and they want their Easter photos out in the middle of a field. And but I actually think you should do an editorial of a family shoot, like an Easter shoot, but like do it with a family, but do it like Eastern European. I don't know, like I'll have to go over the concept with you, but you just edit it that way, make it all like dark, and but they're all smiling. With of course they also have to have like really like dirty teeth. But anyway,
smiling and Eastern European is an oxymoron right there, my dude.
Exactly. Well, that's the point. It's the juxtaposition of the emotions and all that. But the reason I bring up these consumer-driven types of photography is like I said, if you're a boudoir photographer or you're a wedding photographer, you sit down with the client and you go, okay, what do you like? And they're just going to show you like all this cookie cutter shit. Well, when it comes to me specifically, I shoot weddings, but I do it in a very editorial style. And I do it in the same style that I shoot models with. And that's a very specific thing. And if you look at the wedding industry specifically, it's a very preset driven industry. A lot of the stuff looks the same. And if that's the kind of thing that drives you crazy as a photographer, you're probably not in the right genre of photography, because the client wins. They're the ones who are paying you $5,000 to shoot their wedding. And so you're going to use the goddamn cookie cutter presets because that's what they want. Now, what I do is I sit down with a prospective couple and I go, this is my work. This is what my work looks like. If what you want does not look like my work, do not hire me, because I can't make my stuff look like other people's stuff. I can only make my stuff look like my stuff because I don't use presets. And so I weed out potential wedding clients that way, and I've done it. I mean, I've said no, and that's another thing is you need to learn how to say no to clients. And we could do a whole episode on business and saying no to clients, but you need to turn people down who aren't a good fit for you, because you're disarming a bomb that will go off later, and it's an expectation bomb. It's the oh, we hired you for this project. And what we got, and keep in mind if you're not new to wedding photography, these things plan out over a long period of time. So you're leading somebody down a road for a really long time. And that's why I weed people out at the very first meeting I have. Even before we put together a shot list, it's like, hey, am I a good fit for you? Because if I'm not, this is the time to have the conversation. Because if you morph your mood board, because I make prospective wedding clients put together mood boards of everything they want. And if it doesn't look like something I feel like I can shoot, I'm just like, nah, I'm not doing it. So, but yeah, that's what I do. I have clients do their homework. I think that works best for avoiding, bear traps to step in.
Dude, I have such a loose array of what I shoot. Sometimes some of my shots look like, 60s portraits of Paul Newman, and some other shots look like, they're movie stills of The Matrix. And there's not a whole lot of in between. Well, I mean, I guess there is a lot of in between there. But I've recently, I had a client reach out, really cool dude, and he presented me with 5 shots that he wanted to emulate for our shoot. And he's not a model, but he was okay at modeling. And the shots he sent me, all 5 of them were different. And so, I should probably start drilling clients more about what they want out of the photo session, but I always assume that they're thinking ahead of time that, like, okay, I'm going to get an amalgamation of what I see on the Instagram and not much outside of it.
Well, and that goes into what we talked about in our models episode, which is a lot of times we have non-models reach out to us and they see work that we do with professional models. And they don't realize how much work goes into some of these shoots. And so they're like, I want to look like something like that. And they don't realize how much mood boarding and preparation and all that goes into it. And so when they come up to you with a very disjointed idea with absolutely no continuity in the types of shots whatsoever, I mean, that's something that we learn, like, oh yeah, they don't do this all the time. They see something and go, that's cool, but maybe they don't really have the artistic eye, because if they did, they'd take the damn shots themselves or whatever. And so that's what they're depending on us to do, whether they realize it or not, is we have to go, hold on a second, these don't all go together. Do you want a piece that has continuity? And if it does, it's my job at this very early meeting to hit the reset button and recalibrate your expectations, maybe refocus the shoot on where it needs to go. And then if you end up at an impasse there, then that lets you know not to work with that client.
Yeah, and something that you do have to say, which I do say, is, and it's kind of a difficult thing to say because clients don't want to hear this. It's not my job to make you look like you've had 13 years of modeling, under your belt. Like, I cannot direct you to naturally look like a model on camera. It's not my job. I can edit similar ways. I can set up the lighting in similar ways. I can use similar colors and similar lenses, all that good stuff. And I can like coach you to, get a nice Rembrandt and kind of like, relax, different parts of your face and to, change shoulder posturing and, little stuff like that. But it's like, I can't, you're not going to look like Paul Newman.
Well, a professional model, and we touched upon this in great detail in our modeling episode. Professional models practice poses a lot to the point where they become effortless. It's not to say that what they're doing is easy. It's what they're doing is practiced. And the key element here is effort. They get to the point, a professional model, where a pose is effortless. And therefore, they can, instead of them on camera appearing like they're thinking about a pose, they are naturally in that pose, and now they have elevated themselves up another tier where it's like, okay, now I can concentrate on what I'm doing with my face. Maybe I have a little 500-yard stare. I squinched my eyes a little bit or whatever. Or I have a less strong pose because the point of the shoot is the close. It's a fashion shoot, so I need to be more in the background of my facial expressions. They can work that part of their craft. When you deal with a non-model who has no experience, their absolute ceiling is getting to that pose with all the effort in the world. They have to work at that. And so the key difference there is effort. If you are effortlessly hitting that pose, your work will look better than someone who has to put all their effort just to hit that base pose because it's the first time they've ever done it. Their shoulders aren't relaxed or whatever. They're just not. It clearly looks like they got coached to that versus somebody who's like, I just nailed this shit and I'm on a much bigger level now and I'm doing way more, because like, for instance, you could tell a model to get in this really cool pose, or a subject, I should say, as we said in the last episode. If you don't know how to model, you're a subject. You're not a model. If you coach a subject to a pose, like I said, their peak is getting to that pose. But then the other model is like, well, I already hit that base pose. Now I can do something else to make the image more interesting. I can flick my dress to where it's like creating motion or something. In addition, they can add an extra element to it to make it a more interesting picture. And they're always going to have that advantage, even if they are both in the exact same pose. One is going to look effortless and the other one is going to look coached. Like I said, the very top of that person's ceiling is the very bottom of that model's floor. Because that model, like I said, create motion, do something with their hair, concentrate more on their facial expression. Because you can't get a subject, a non-model, to do all 12 of those things without them just looking like they're a fucking puppet and you're a ventriloquist.
Yeah.
And so I always have those expectation meetings with subjects who look at stuff I do with professional models. I'm like, look, like, this is where your expectations have to be. If we exceed it, great. But like, it's not about how pretty you are. Everybody I shoot is attractive. So how pretty you are has nothing to do with any of this. It has to do with how well you know your body in front of a camera. And so yeah, having these people do their homework is important. And it's more important for non-models, for subjects, because if you're trying to coach them into something, like a lot of times they don't know what they want, as we said. And so they just like give you like this smorgasbord of poses. And, like I said, sometimes they come back and like it's all shot with different camera systems, with different lenses. One's in a studio with a white backdrop. The other one is like, downtown Austin with the Capitol in the background. And it's like, where are you going with this? Because like what you like of mine, like, because that's why I don't say choose your 5 favorite shots, because if I went through your portfolio and I chose my 5 favorite shots, they'd probably all be very different shoots.
And you'd have to be a chick.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's very true. But if I chose my 5 favorite shots of yours, like, they would probably be very different. That's why I don't say it that way. I say pick your favorite 5 shots of a style that I've done that you want to be shot in that style, because then it kind of hopefully gets them to kind of tailor, like, oh, I just want to do environmental portraits in a green belt. They'll choose like 5 shots that were taken in green belts. Or I've had models come back and it's 5 shots with white backdrops in a studio. I'm like, sweet, I know what backdrop color to choose. And so that's what I say by do your homework, or make the clients do their homework, which that helps you in turn do your homework and makes you a better photographer.
Yeah, your best bet when working with those clients is like you'll realize when you try to coach them into one pose, they're either coachable or they're not coachable. And if they're not coachable, your best bet at getting the best shots out of them is making them let go. It like just keep telling them like, dude, you just gotta like let go. You stop trying in front of this camera and just let it all go.
Well, and I look at it, we had this conversation before we started the episode. I find that shooting men is very different than shooting women. I find the expectations for men are a lot lower as far as what they need to do to pose. A lot of times, put your hands in your back pockets, like scratch your shoulder, whatever the fuck. Really easy poses for guys in general compared to what they ask women to do. It's like, oh yeah, like get into this fucking crazy pretzel triangle thing and put your hand. Like women, I think in general, are asked to do much more difficult posing, but I take a lot of really great pictures of guys, and I find it easier to shoot guys, one, because I am one, and so it's easier to coach someone who's kind of like you. And I look really ridiculous doing women's poses. So yeah, mirror me, and then they start laughing. Like, wow, you look like a fucking idiot. I'm like, you're correct. So you're not going to look as bad as this, thankfully. But I find that, to your point about just let go, is because the fundamental thing about good modeling is a lot of times it's just benign shit that you're doing. Like the second somebody throws a camera in front of them, they start getting weird. And it's like, no, like just do some poses, just do some poses. The only difference is if we're shooting for fashion or whatever, we want maybe a little bit of negative space in them, but you put your hand on your hips, right? Okay, cool. You put your hand on your hips. Okay, drop your shoulder, drop your hand down by your side. No, don't give me Mickey Mouse hands. Just do it like you normally do it, And
you want to know, there's a really fun trick you can do is if you've got a model, not a model, but a client in front of a backdrop.
Subject.
And you want them to like fucking understand what you mean by let go, is tell them you're going to take 5 minutes, and then tell them you're not allowed to be on your phone for the 5 minutes, and don't, just like stay in front of the backdrop. Just get used to the space, and then pretend you're looking at your camera for like, 30 seconds or whatever. And then watch what that subject does. They're going to break down into some natural pose where they're comfortable. And then they're going to start thinking, that they're going to start thinking, they're going to start looking at things. And then suddenly they're going to be in their own form. They're going to have a pose that is viable, that works, that looks natural, that you can photograph. And if you've already got the lights set up, just raise the camera and take a couple shots of them, and then show them the shots and just say, okay, look at these shots, and then look at the shots before that where you were trying super hard to look like, you were in the latest music video on MTV. Like, just be. And that usually they're just like, oh, okay, this is a lot easier. And then their stress goes away, your stress goes away, and then suddenly you've got something to work with.
Instagram model poses, those are the bad ones. Pro tips from Brandon Gorrie. That does it for today's episode. Hopefully this episode and the last episode where we talked about improvements in photography, hopefully these tips were helpful to you. We certainly hope so, because otherwise we're just two dudes talking into a microphone and not getting much accomplished. So, but we thank you. We're going to have some episodes coming out soon. We're going to be doing an episode on state of film prices. We're going to do episodes on retouching, color grading, etc. Check out the F11 podcast on all major platforms. You can check us out at f11.com, f11pod.com, F11pod, Instagram, Twitter handles, and of course, leave us a 5-star review.
Thank you for listening.
Not a 1-star review.
For more information about this podcast, go to www.f11pod.com.